Hey everyone, welcome to GTM Field Notes, a Syft series where we talk to GTM leaders about what's actually changing in the field, not just the theory or the LinkedIn hype, but actual workflows, experiments, failures, and lessons that show up in real revenue teams. I'm Imran Patel, founder and CEO of Syft. At Syft, we spend a lot of time thinking about buyer signal, who's showing intent, and what is noise versus what is not. And today I'm joined by my co-host, Gregory Kennedy, founder of Vibe SaaS and a three-time CMO himself. And today we are talking with our guest, Danny Chepenko, who is the co-founder of Extruct AI, a cool go-to-market tech startup, and also like a very good writer. That's how I know about him on LinkedIn and Substack. And so I definitely encourage everyone to follow his writing. He's one of the more sharper writers in terms of like GTM tech and engineering. Then it's so nice to have you.
Thank you guys for bringing me here.
All right, cool. I'll start with like maybe tell us a little bit about Extruct. What does Extruct do? And for the audience here, I think they are generally familiar with like databases like ZoomInfo and like Apollo and all that. Like how is Extruct different? Like, is it a deep research company? Is it like agentic database company? Like, how would you position yourself as?
It's a very good question because I think it's changed a lot every week, our positioning. But I think the latest version of that, we try to position ourselves as agentic company database. So what combines the two worlds of company intelligence. So we have our own database, like similar to Apollo, ZoomInfo, Crunchbase, all these guys. And we also we have the deep research infrastructure similar to Exa, Parallel, Perplexity. And so by combining these two worlds, we can overperform both of two competitors. Like, so we're better than Apollo, ZoomInfo because we have the most fresh data on the market that we can do with the deep research, and we're better than the guys like Parallel, which are more horizontal, because we can double down on more specific data points that GTM folks need. For example, we have our own like a data point about all funding, or we have a data point about the HQ country or employee size or the tech stack, so people don't need actually to research that in real time to spend their precious tokens on that, so they can just query, retrieve that, and we keep this updated every week, so it's up-to-date data. So, and why we call it agentic, because we try to see a lot of demand and interest from people who want to use Extruct and other inside their agents, inside the Cloud Code setup, inside the OpenClaw, etc. And we largely believe that's the future of GTM, and we'll be happy to talk about that today.
I guess I have one follow-up on that. So you mentioned there are these other agentic deep research companies. Obviously, all the foundation labs have their own deep research stuff. Yeah. Gemini has it and GPT. But then like there are these newer companies, as you mentioned, like Parallel, Exa. And their thing always is that we go search things in real time, right? Like the more accurate data that an agent has, the better it performs. But obviously it comes with a lot of cost in terms of speed and actual cost as well. Why did you decide, like you said that your position, like the way you do it is a little bit different, where you maintain the database and you keep it up to date? Like what are the benefits of going in that direction for GTM specifically compared to some of these horizontal deep research tools?
The opportunities that we see on the market, that very few providers that really care about the quality of the company data. And that's not really the easiest. There are a lot of problems that need to be solved. So for example, take the child-parent relationship, right? It's a very interesting problem for all RevOps folks who are selling account base, right? They want to understand how the things interconnected, what's the relationship between regional subsidiaries, what's the relationship between child companies, and not only from this topology perspective, but also from the decision-making standpoint, like how the org chart, how that impacts the org chart here. So we double down on this problem, so where we can like extract all information available publicly and build a better topology for the company, and then distribute that to people who care about that. And so that's not what you can fetch easily through Apollo or ZoomInfo, which historically more focused on contact data. They were like, hey, I need RevOps people from Klaviyo. Hey, this is the list of people, and start outreaching. So we try to add some intelligence here. Like if you're selling to Klaviyo and you want to sell them, I don't know, observability software. So we help you to understand how the engineering decision-making looks like, how different teams are structured, and what the technologies and what actually projects happening inside this company. So we mine a lot of data about what we call company graph, right? We mine socials, we read job descriptions, both active and historical. We go through various means of how we can extract some interesting technographic data, like looking at the website, looking from job description, looking from case studies, etc. And so that helps us to better understand. And then we also do offline post-processing to build this relationship graph. So it's a bit of engineering work. So, and that's where we're heading, because everybody sees the edge of us. So that no one actually cares about that data, and you can't easily retrieve that in offline like Parallel and Exa. So we can spend like 1 hour and you can do something what we can return to you in 2 seconds. So that's where we see the edge here.
Okay, I see. Well, it's fine. I like the fun there, edge, as in like, so like, it seems like because you're focusing on graphs rather than pitch, a big distinction, because like, and especially I think in B2B also, like there is a lot of like graph relationships, right? Even like a company has partners, as customers, as prospects, and it's all interconnected in B2B as well. So like most databases don't usually have that. And then the org chart stuff as well, which is a graph problem as well. So I like that term. It's the graph is our edge. All right. And Gregory, you had like, I think it's like, you had a question about like, Denny has written a lot about AI slop and outbound email. So like, let's jump into that.
So you have this like next generation lead database, right? That collects a lot more information, triangulates a lot more signals. Like that sounds excellent, right? So of course, and I saw what you were writing about on LinkedIn, the question comes down to like, how do marketers action that data? And I like the way that you put it, saying that like, there's all these agentic tools and things available or automations that are being put in place that are basically automating cold email down to like zero human effort. And it's getting harder and harder to be effective with it. I know like in my own experience with cold email and other people I speak to, like the last year and a half, like you could just see the effectiveness just falling off a cliff because it's so automated. So I'm curious, like what you think about that. Maybe I'll just leave it like really high level. Like, what is your perspective on even outreach in general, but cold email as someone who's like businesses providing marketers and teams leads? Like, how do you think that they should action that in a world where we've got all of this new automated technology that's going to just increase the volume of outreach that's happening, right?
I'm still think like outreach is really powerful tactics. And I don't know, like if I, like every time I had any conversation with a founder who aiming to start something, I think like that's what you need to start. And then you also need, depending on whom you're selling, but also content, I think all this type of thing that helps you to shape the vision and build your audience is also important. So two stuff, outbound and content, I think the most important tactics today in GTM. Like that's what you guys are doing, the tool with this podcast, right? So
correct
as well. So and I think it's on a cold outbound, I really would like to distinguish two parts. So the high volume sending and low volume sending. And I think both make sense today. Like on a high volume scale, like it's like there is still a market and you can still, I think, have a good result of that. Say what you're doing. For example, I would say for us really worked well, like when we had, we wanted to test some ideas on RevOps people and we just mine all RevOps people. We do very, very little segmentation there. So we're like, okay, we're looking for like non-enterprise customers and we send them offer and we had a very good result. I think we had a reply rate of like 6%, just really craft the offer. And I think because we were like quite sure about what we want to achieve there and how we want to communicate, that yielded result here. Second point is about low volume outreach is I think it's more about when you have to do like better research here, like, and you don't want to spoil an account, right? So you don't want to, you really care about your relationship. You probably have around, your TAM is about like 1,000 companies. You want to have a good impression from the beginning. So I think it's good overall to be prepared for every touch here. And here, I think what we as an Extruct, where we actually also targeting whom we want to partner. So people who want to do very deep research of what's happening in the account and how they want to get prepared there and how they want to craft their outbound message. But actually what works for us and how I'm not an expert in call outbound, so I think I have to learn a lot in order to get like the first leads from that. But I tried everything. I tried like some I think the first thing I tried like generating through with Claude, with different chat GPTs created that have like, 1,000-line prompts that will help to personalize. But then I realized it's all going nowhere. I don't like the copies that it's generating. And the worst part, I don't know even what to do to make it better. So like starting screaming on this chat GPT and Claude, hey, you don't understand me, like you're doing some bullshit, etc. And then I calmed down and started writing on my own, like as if I would write it. And that's what my routine look like. Whenever I set up a campaign, I just write like all sequence on my own, just with my imagination, and then I ask Claude as an editor, hey, like craft this, do you think what signal we should craft? And actually, when I craft this message, I also understand which signals I need to mine. What are the most ideal combination of signals that will make this outbound really juicy? So that's when I started doing that. I think sometimes I receive very not natural replies like, hey guys, it's not really what I need, but I like your copy. So I feel very good about that.
I think that's the highest form of compliment that you can get. Like, I'm not in the market, but I still open your email and like it resonated. And when somebody replies with that, means you're copied. That's pretty good. I think I have a similar experience as well, which is I think I have a similar experience with writing in general with AI, which is that I have a particular draft that I always write, the first one. And in a lot of cases, what I have noticed that is, first of all, I think Claude is much better than ChatGPT in terms of retaining your point. I think ChatGPT just like rewrites a lot of stuff. And the second thing I see is like the more I stay in that thing with them, by the end of it, a lot of good points get compressed away. And so I think that the trick is to figure out when to stop, because if you don't stop, then it's not your writing at the end of it. A lot of times, actually, I don't know. I think Greg, you made a similar point in the past as well, right? Like this, a lot of times you actually just scratch and stay with your draft.
Use all of them, and I switch back and forth, and I have favorites. Like I started using a lot of Gemini, then I got into Claude. I think that like to write, and I've always been someone that was like a fan of doing my own writing, and so I think a mix of both are quite effective. I always joke that like someone did a lot of marketing copy. There's a lot of things out there that like I wouldn't want to waste the marketer's time to write. Like it's very appropriate, right? Like I always joke, my joke was always the descriptions on flat screen TVs on Best Buy's website. No one should be writing that by hand. Like that's a perfect task for AI, right? But I think like what you described, when you're trying to do cold outreach and you want to get have an impact, maybe doing it so it's personal. And I always use terms like colloquial. Right? That was something that was not popular like a few years ago. And I've been doing things that are like painfully casual or painfully colloquial to signal that it's actually from a real person, right? Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of tricks, and AI is just changing the nature of all of this. But I think your distinction too, Danny, between like if you're doing like really like large bulk outbound, there's ways to like get really good at like segmenting and then matching offer to the needs of that person. And then when you're doing something more custom and it's a smaller group of people, obviously like just being more personal and hitting in pain points and just finding ways to relate to them totally makes sense. Go ahead, you finish.
I think to one point on that, which is that to Danny's like large scale versus personalized, and what you said, the targeting matters. The targeting decides the cold outbound, large scale outbound outcomes, in my opinion. Right, the copy not so much. And then on the smaller scale, when you do more ABM style, your list is already predetermined anyway. So I think that's the other thing. I think a lot of people, when they do outbound, the problem always is that they just don't have the good segmentation. So like anything that you see. So cool. I'm switching gears a little bit, like same like topic of quality. I'll go back to the data quality question because that's what Extruct works on. And it's a topic that's dear to your heart. Like you made the point that you cannot actually run a reliable go-to-market agent on top of like bad data. And a lot of people actually run their go-to-market on CRM data, which is sometimes stale, sometimes incomplete. What actually breaks first when teams try to deploy agents against their CRM database? Is it like, what do you see? Like, is it like duplication, like the mapping, the parent-child mapping, the mastering, the relationships? Like, what is it that like agents don't do a good job of when they run against CRM versus like how you think about it, like when somebody does it against the Extruct agentic database, I would say?
I think it depends a lot like what agents you want to do, right? So, and very good point. I think that if you have a good offer and you have a good product, sometimes you can go and you can grow really fast, like even with the stealth and bad CRM data. I had a chat with, I think, Snowflake guys, like they were sharing that they have an awful sales force back into 2019, 2020, when they were like growing, I think 30% year over year. And like, they even had a team, like sales enablement team. And like I was talking with the accountant that said it was like impossible to find anything in Salesforce, like to match like what is a relation. But we somehow like managed to overcome that because like the demand was so high, like people were pulling so fast and we just need to close and like and probably like do that without Salesforce at all.
Anthropic is like that right now.
I think, I don't know, I heard like maybe the guys from Bolt or like Lovable, they share like they even forget to reply for inbound because they don't have capacity. They definitely don't care about
for the rest of us. What do you see?
And for the rest, is I think like what do you need like this agentic stuff on your CRM, right? So most of the people, I think they want to do some boring RevOps stuff like updating the custom fields after the call, or like adding the pipeline health every Monday, like what is happening, or like measuring medic scores and all this stuff, right? So you might want to deploy the agents that do that. And then when you do, I think, retrieval, you want to, okay, like when you have a large database, maybe about 2,000 people, I think people and company, I think this problem starting feeling really important to you because you want to ask a question like on semantic level, hey, like whom have we spoken from automotive that we didn't manage to close, right? And then like how would you build this agent route, right? So you want to measure all the description to rely on the description, or you want to rely on the company name, or you want to rely on some relationship between that. So that has become crucial, I think. And that's a little bit caveat for our business because what we're trying to propose is not like for everyone on the market, right? So I think the values that we deliver is only applied for like Series A plus companies that already have established sales motion and they want to amplify that. Like, I don't know, I can give you an example of like some people have really complex GTM. For example, we help a company who's selling robotics hardware to all refineries, and they're selling plant-based. So they don't care they only care who are working on a specific plant. And there's also very interesting interdependence because there could be an asset owner, there could be a service provider, and sometimes the asset owner wants to buy through this service provider. A service provider is a blocker, so they need to map all this ontology somehow, right? And they want to, and no CRM has an object like plants, right? They have companies and they have people, and in a best case they have like cloud company, which it was impossible to do anything with CRM. So we basically help them to create a like separate database where we do the data engineering, we pull the data from their CRM, we enrich this, and then we create a layer where the agent can communicate. So that's the case. So not everyone has the same level of problems I think you go to market.
So I guess in your case, what you're saying is that it's not only just like a data quality problem, but it's just that the models that CRMs come with, which is like companies, context, deal objects, like whatever Greg probably knows more about this, like whatever people dreamt up in like 1970s and we are stuck with. Sorry, I didn't want to date you, Greg. You probably know more about my history only goes up to Salesforce. And what was the thing before Salesforce? I forget the name. Danny, you're saying is just that like it's not just a data quality problem, it's just like the model isn't just correct for a lot of people. And then, so in that case, what you're saying is that you still need CRM because like people want to capture your sales process, but then people are moving to this other database that could be more bespoke. Maybe they can wipe code it. And then Extruct keeps that database a little bit, like feeds the data into that database. Is that where you're seeing the world going?
Interesting question. I think I first encountered that when I started working on PLG startup, and I just understood like none of the CRMs are actually good fit for PLG, right? Because I was scared about like how my team is about the performance of self-serve team and how we can scale that. And I think that was like 2021, where like, I don't know, 5-6 startups try to build like PLG CRMs, and
most of them went out of business. I think all of them. I think Focus was the last. Got acquired by somebody recently, so
by Patel, I think, and even they change a lot, right? So they no longer the PLG CRM. And I'm definitely a bit out of the business, like about the product side, but I always wonder why it didn't really went well, right? Because there are a lot of PLG companies, and I still see like this very cumbersome to use any of the CRM.
You have written 2 articles. I think like Danny has two very good articles on how do you do PLG modeling for like how PLG startups can use HubSpot. And now I think the recent one was Atio.
Because we're starting using Atio.
Exactly. It seems like you have to keep on rebuilding, doing PLG stuff in CRM.
I think maybe I should do the PLG CRM one day.
Yes. You can get 7th time lucky. You never know. Like, there is like invention. There are no bad ideas. It's only bad timing. And it's like, it's possible, but like all these, that topic is very dear. And like, because we help a lot of our customers are PLG as well. And so this is a constant problem for them as well. And tackling that problem in a different way at Syft, but we have talked about it. But it's the same, it's the same thing where the CRM model just doesn't work for a certain segment of the population. And PLG is actually one of the more tech forward. So you would have assumed that PLMs would build for that audience, because so that like for the general audience and like maybe for Greg as well, like then maybe can you outline like maybe 1 or 2 things that like CRMs do very poorly for PLG customers?
I think for most of the PLG customers, it's PLG, right? Is product led growth, right? So the main difference is that you have a lot of self-serve usage, and your goal is somehow to amplify this usage into like real sales opportunities. And there are multiple ways to do that. First, you can like grow the self-serve usage up until the point where you knock on the door of decision making and ask, hey guys, like it's time to think about the better contract here. Or like you just use it as a signal, like especially I think it's very important for some dev tools, whereas the developers they like playing around with tools, but then you starting approaching the CTO or head of engineering and saying, hey guys, like I saw someone getting into like our product, you guys have any problem, I can show how we can help, etc. So but the idea is that you get this self-serve signal and you want somehow to act on that. And the model of all this, the CRM is, I think, historically been very constrained about 3 main entities: contact, companies, and deals. And CRMs try to, at some point of time, they introduce this custom objects that you can create anything you want, but it still, I think, was very second-class citizen as a feature in the CRM. So, and it was still very cumbersome. Most of these PLG SaaS, they use Stripe, right, to manage subscription, etc. And I need to pipe this all together. I need maybe to hire someone to build this workflows, and this workflows always breaks, and like then you want to understand like how to do the enrichment of Gmail accounts, for example, and find their LinkedIn's, etc. These problems, right? So, and that's what I think the CRM really missing out of the box. And so there are multiple people who help with that, who help setting up HubSpot for PLG, who help setting up Atio for PLG, but it's never been that swift and natural when it's.
Like the last tactical question before we move on to like for somebody who's a PLG founder or RevOps or GTM person, like what would you recommend them doing today in 2026? Like, would you recommend they use Atio like you did, or you think there is something better out there? What would be your recommendation?
My current state of the CRM has really changed a lot. Like I think for today, I think that CRM is like it's like a GitHub engineers. So you just need to store the context there, and I envision that you need to communicate with that mostly in a headless way. So it should be built around the headless consumption, but all the context about like notes from the meetings, pre-filled fields in order not to an agent not to go through, all faster retrieve, all assigned people to a specific deal, and all the stuff should be there and should be very enriched and in a maintainable way. But it should be very flexible by design. That if I want to add Slack, and I would be able to do that very swiftly without actually setting up some NA10 workflow or Zapier or whatsoever, right? So it should be like, hey, this is Stripe, this is my key, and I want these deals to map what I have. So that's how I see. And I think from that standpoint, I don't think there's a big distinction of what you can choose from the market, right? I see like Atio, like Clarifies, there's AI. I think they all do more or less the same stuff, right? So I think that's if someone picks up, so you need to understand that you need to choose the CRM from the perspective of how you can be flexible in this headless design, because that's where I think you will appreciate more the CRM at that point. Do you guys use, by the way, as a CRM?
We use we HubSpot, partly because a lot of our customers use HubSpot. And so it just is a way for us to dog food and making sure our choice. And that is the main reason. And then HubSpot was also pretty early on the MCP bandwagon as well. I think the actual product itself is like a little bit janky, but like if you just use it through MCP, I think it's a little bit more serviceable. But there are some good names out there. Lots of CRMs happening. I think Clarify, you gave a shout out. I know Patrick, I was actually just chatting with him, and we might get him on the show at some point to talk more about this. But they have a very good headless solution. Actually, he was demoing that Clarify a couple of weeks ago at an event. And the one thing I didn't know about Clarify is Clarify actually exposes the actual warehouse behind the scenes. The warehouse on which actually all the data of the CRM is maintained in a warehouse, and the warehouse is actually accessible to you, which I think is pretty novel. So you can just use it as a headless thing. I think this is. Anyway, that was I hope like anybody who's like figuring out which CRM to use, hopefully that answers the question from, I guess, somebody who has solved that problem maybe 2-3 times now and like probably has the best idea of how to do it. But if you haven't already, go read the article that I think Danny wrote like probably like a few months ago on UNPLG. I think that has a lot of juice in it. All right, Greg, you had a question as well.
I think we should like maybe switch gears and talk more about business models. There's been a lot of discussion about SaaS. Is it the end of SaaS? Is it the SaaS apocalypse? And I think that you're someone who has like identified perhaps that things are transitioning from selling a tool to selling an outcome. And I think this theme actually is quite big these days. There's even all this talk about like YC had a request for startups. They wanted AI enabled services, right? So I think you're seeing this dynamic all across the market where outcomes are becoming a focus perhaps. So I'm just curious, like, what do you think about all this? Like, do you think it's overblown perhaps as well, right? Like not all SaaS products are going to go away, or maybe you believe that. I'm just curious, like, what is your perspective? What do you think about future SaaS and selling outcomes versus selling tools?
And then I think one extra thing is I think Extruct does do some services as well, I think, right? Like based on what we I think like how has that gone for you? Like how do you keep, my follow-up would, how do you keep that balance between services? We do some services as well. Like
Imran's excited about this one.
Right? It's always like, I think a lot of founders are just like trying to figure out, if you go towards this model, how do you balance it against like, how do you not fall in the agency trap, right? And so tell me about what your experience has been.
I thought about that before a conversation, and I thought like, if that's really where the business model goes, so it's just an admission that selling SaaS is extremely tough these days. So I think, okay, if I would be someone like Lovable and I would have like the infinite inbound, like would I really do services? Probably not, right? But I would not be surprised if Lovable actually do some service these days, and I think that's where they eventually, I think they will end up doing some custom helping, work with internal products, etc. So I don't think the same point. I don't think any service work is novel to the SaaS world. People have been doing that for quite some time. It was positioned differently. It wasn't like forward deployed engineer. It was like solution engineer. It was someone like, and it still was like very high marginal business. And even like high marginal, it was a good retention, because I think when you, with a solution engineer, you really cement your position in a customer and no way they can churn from you. Like I think Databricks is a good example here. They starting doing that way, like probably since inception, right? They always worked on a customer. It helps them with the data strategy, and that's how they became like the go-to company today, right? So I think that from what we see, actually, that's in our business, right, in data business, we slightly touch that, right? So not everyone understands the value of the clean data and on this RevOps aspect, and we started actually promoting that from the end. So hey, if you want to run some AI agents on your CRM, which is a big demand these days, like you should do that on a clean data, and we help you with doing that. And we actually sit down with you, understand how your sales motion works, and we craft really unique offer for you.
As in you build the agents for them.
And we also build the agent for them. We build some agents in Slack. We help to build like the workflows for them. So it's, of course, like from like, the more customers we have, the more processes we establish, and with every new customer we can have like playbook and how we can onboard and better act. But still, like it requires like cold start, and we have to dive deeper into what's happening. Because also, if you guys doing any business in go-to-market space, I think you will be only valuable if you can affect the final goal of either bringing the meeting or helping the transaction to happen, right? And so when we started on this data side, like, hey, that was, I think, where we struggled a lot, like over the first years of the company. We were positioned, so hey, we help you to find leads, and we help you to find like the best niche, best niche, leads building, etc. And that was, people come, they build this list and they churn, like, okay, now I need to sell. And we understand, okay, we actually need somehow to figure out how we can help you to execute as well. Because you help to execute, that's the people will actually value most, right? So, and I think that's why there is, in my perspective, is this go-to-market, the line between SaaS, that's GTM SaaS, and B2B agency, RevOps agency, cold email agency is really blurring this day, right? So because agency can also start vibe coding some tools, and they're quite good in that, and they understand what people need, and they don't want actually to bring new SaaS in order to sell them to their customers. They understand how difficult it is to get this relationship, right? And on the other side, the SaaS people who are maybe have better acumen in the product building, but they have never experienced this service relationship. So they start doing that as well, because they understand, okay, that's how I build the stronger retention. That's how the value from the feedback loop is much stronger. So that's what's happening. And I think for all people who deploying agents, I think that's inevitable, right? Because all cases are very different, and sometimes you just need to be on the ground in order to understand how to do that.
I think that's a good perspective. Do you have any perspective on business models, like selling seats versus tokens versus services? Like there's a lot of things that people are experimenting with. So I'm curious, like what your thoughts are, and maybe even like how you guys have thought about it for your own business. It sounds like it's evolved over time.
We're still in the process of understanding. I think if we sell the service, we don't sell tokens. We try to, and I think that's actually the good selling point of the service. Like, hey, forget about tokens. We just focus on the value here. I think we experimenting how to do that. We try to do like per lead base, per meeting book, some other engagement, but overall, I think it's correct approach, right? It's very much depends on like in this marketing world. I think sales and marketing, has always been the question like who takes this risk, right? If you go into this like CPA models of marketing, right? So you bring the lead and get paid on that, right? So that only works when you really feel comfortable at the offer and your channels, so you can execute over that, and that's the math will work here. And I think also that's also relevant to where we're now today, because you have to understand, okay, can I actually take this risk and charge only for leads? Can I actually generate this lead? Or like, if I can generate, why should I actually be in front of this customer? Maybe it's time to like, I should say them upfront, hey guys, like we can't really work with you, like because of XYZ, we're not capable of doing that. So for sales, I think that's still very much to explore here.
I think there is one point that you said earlier, which is that a lot of what your product is also determines what you end up doing as service, right? So if you're a data company that's selling like this vision of like clean data and so on, a lot of value is on activation of that data. And to show that the data is good, you have to activate it well. And so like, I guess what you were saying is with Extruct, you actually go and build out agents for people so that it kind of illustrates the quality of your data and really shows the value. Because with data, no matter how good it is, if you don't act on it in a particular way, it's actually worthless. So sometimes the service can bridge that gap that you have. And maybe in the future, maybe you will build some agent stuff, who knows? But it's like sometimes the customer is not capable of like fully utilizing your platform, in which case you build out stuff around the platform in the beginning to bridge that gap.
And also, I think like business model is very much affected by this competitor space, right? So I think like everyone is, especially in GTM, right? So they're people trying to approach that from companies trying to approach that from different perspectives, right? So there's like a CRMs that have their own agents use. The companies like Glee and Dust, who promote themselves as a search engines, right? And they also starting building agents, and that's how because they also, what you're saying, like the value is not in the data, it's not in indexing, is how you can act on that, right? And then there are also like workflow builders, like, I don't know, NA10, it's like
a whole bunch
of them. And then we're also like guys like us who are data providers, which is also interesting, right? Because we have our own asset, like a data that's probably no one have in the market, like so. It's interesting to see like what will end up. Like there will be 7 agents from different companies in Slack competing with each other, or like there will be some partnership, like, I don't know, Salesforce will start selling agents on some auction to the companies in Slack. I don't know. We'll see how it works.
So your monetization model, I'm assuming, is more usage-based, correct, right now?
On a self-serve, yes, usage-based. When it comes to service agreements, we try to work basically from per project base. We try to commit for results. as if for now. So not selling per seat. We try to basically what you guys said, pay per lead or pay per some immediate results. But
like and definitely not like leads are out. And then on the services side, there was a very interesting thread the other day on Twitter as well, which is like, you don't want to, on the services, definitely avoid hourly billing, right? Because as soon as you come into hourly billing, you are like locked into like this model, like which is old school of like, to scale, you need to then hire wall clock, which mostly is humans. And so it's better to commit to outcome rather than hours, and then use AI to compress the hours to get that outcome. Obviously, the whole challenge here is just that what outcomes do you choose, right? And so that in GTM, fundamentally the problem in GTM is that people always think of really downstream outcomes in go-to-market, like which is opportunity creators or meetings booked and whatnot. And I think that's actually really short-sighted as well. Like I think it's just because there are just too many variables for that to work out, in my opinion, especially in B2B. I know Greg has a performance marketing background, and I think in B2C, there I think it's like much more, the outcomes are much more the lift, the CPM, CPL, like much easier, right?
I would agree. I guess I'll chime in. I'll agree with that one. Like B2C marketing versus B2B is very different, right? On B2C, like you have very clear metrics and goals, right? B2B, the marketing team nearly always doesn't own the last mile, right? So everyone tries to be data driven and they put all these metrics in place, and there's all this talk about marketing owning pipeline or whatever. But the reality is that like you still need sales to close the deal, right? You've got to find a way to work together, and so you just have less control than you do in like a B2, a B2C situation.
Sales cycles much longer. Right.
There's a million, right? So there's a whole bunch of there's a million other differences as well, in addition to less control. That's correct, right? I'll share this one with you because I worked a lot of advertising products. Like when you get into B2B, like it was really funny. I'd ask people like, well, how are you going to buy the ads? Like, oh, we're going to buy it on clicks. And I'm like, but people don't click through to buy Salesforce, right? Because like that was one of our customers a long time ago. Right. And there's you can't bill them with, it's not like they click and go, boop, I've just installed Salesforce and I'm going to get 17 more versions of it, right? So there's some challenges there. There's one more question that we had that I want to end this with because I know you have to go. But it's Rick, I have issues with this. That's why I'm curious, like what your thoughts are. Like I still find that I get a lot of hallucinations with AI, or I get a lot of things where it's dead wrong. It happens to me still frequently where I'll give it a document and I'll say like, find this for me or just give me some information. And then it'll give me something. And I'll be like, what page is that on? And either it can't find the page or it gives me the page. And then I read it. I'm like, that's not what's on that page. Right. And I know I'm describing like a lot of people's like general experience with this stuff. So I'm just curious as like, what are your thoughts on the hallucinations and security, and maybe the right term is accuracy when it comes to all of these tools, not just your tool, but just this whole desire to automate everything. Like what happens with that? Like, how do we manage for that? Like, what does that mean in like an agentic marketing world?
I think the general response for that would be like where is the hallucination? What's the root cause of hallucination, right? It's probably when you put a lot of data in the context window and ask, hey, like, figure this shit out, right? So I think this is one of the solutions is somehow to bring determinism here, right? Instead of like shipping the whole PDF, let's just do the standardized process for like making the OCR there. Maybe we can put that into a vector database. Maybe we can like extract do some simple grab and extract the pages and so like creating plans here. I think like the advanced models, they basically do that. They work that way. So that's how they perform better than the previous model because they have the harness, what they call it, right? So it's a set of tools that you can use for doing that. So, but if you had deploying, and that's a good, I think, framing model that help when you deploy something in production, right? So you want to, if you care a lot about accuracy, you need to make the context, I think, shorter, try to bring that. So LLM would only reason on a well-verified context, and you need to be very careful about that. And then, of course, like there comes a certain like new neo-testing approach, like making evals, making like experimenting with different memories approach, and so on. But that's that I think like I don't know if that answered your question.
And I think it was a great answer. I guess what if I frame it like this? Like, are you confident that it's a solvable problem? Maybe that's the right way to frame it, because I think that's like the general perception of, let's say, executives. They're like, everyone's hesitant, everyone's worried, because accuracy is really important. So that's what people are. I think is the core question is like, is this a solvable problem?
How do you position? Like, I guess my question here to make it more specific, because your company does deep research on a lot of, right? And it probably like you have your own pipeline and stuff like that. How do you, when this comes up in customer conversations, like what is typically your response?
So we reply that we have like multi-source verification here, and that's basically what we're doing. I think for the deep research in company context, it's especially like an interesting problem to solve. Imagine we have like, so some companies have a unique name, like Snapchat. There are no two Snapchats in the world, but some companies like Apple, they're not that unique. There are a lot of, maybe in Apple computer space, they're a single company, right? But like Apple's, it's a company named Apple's that do some food distribution. It's not that unique, right? And when you do search some over the recent news about this company, you may have this problem because you may find some information about the different Apple, and that's the source of this hallucination, how it can appear. So that's only helps you to what we're doing. We basically have a plan that every source we take a step back and understand, hey, is it truly the Apple that we're talking about? Can you double check this? Let's resolve that into the website and see if that's correct one. And so that's what happens. I think and so answering your question, like about can we solve that? I think we definitely can, because I met with people who do like agentic stuff in biology, for example, where the risk of mistake is much higher than in marketing. Let's be honest. In the medical, right? In the medical context, they are super accurate about like how they use this model, and they have a very strong results there. And like so, and I like by looking what these guys are achieving, I think it makes me feel better about like what we can deliver in a go-to-market space here.
Definitely, like definitely not as critical. I think like all you get, if you get it wrong, you get like
my lead
hate mail from a customer. Like nobody dies though. Hopefully, if you get it wrong, but. This was, I think we're at a time,
awesome.
And I think this was a great conversation. Wish I could have jammed with you a little bit more on CRMs and like just like all the ways in which they suck and like data quality. But I think we can hopefully have another one where we can go deeper into that topic. Thank you for taking the time, Danny, and good luck with Extruct. I'm really excited about what you're building. And I'm also looking forward. You should write way more than what you have. And everybody, please check out Danny's writing.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you guys for inviting me. I really enjoyed that.